Great. So hello everybody, welcome to our Q&A. This is the Surrey Heath Local Committee, and I'll just explain the format a little bit. So we're going to have a short presentation from David Chesnew about men's sheds, followed by some questions if anybody wants to ask David any questions about men's shed. We're going to allow, I think we said 10-15 minutes for that. And then we're going to go into a full Q&A with all the elected representatives that are here this evening that are members of the Surrey Local Committee. We also have with us Jason Gosden from Surrey County Council Highways. So thank you for joining us, Jason. Jason will be there on hand to help us answer any questions of a highways nature. Okay. I'm not going to ask the committee to introduce themselves. When they speak, if they want to, the first time they speak, if they want to say who they are and what area they represent, that's fine. You are this evening, beg your pardon, the members of the committee this evening are cross-party members of the Surrey Local Committee, both borough councillors and county councillors. Although I can't see many county councillors here this evening. We've got Trevor. But anyway, and David, I see David there. So we're going to live stream this to the Surrey Heath Local Committee Facebook page. So if there's anybody else who taps into that and asks any questions, we're going to be monitoring that too. And Nikki from Community Partnerships, if you just want to wave, Nikki, our Community Partnerships Officer, will be helping me facilitate the Q&A this evening. So without further ado, Nikki, if you could go live on Facebook, and then I'll hand over to David Chesnew. Great, looks like we're live on Facebook. So David Chesnew, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Councillor Deach, and good evening, everybody, especially the councillors, because I have a request for them at the end of my talk. I'm speaking here on behalf of a local registered charity, which is the Cambly and District Men's Shed. I'm going to split my talk into three parts. The first part to summarise the men's shed movement. The second part to tell you what progress we've made locally so far. And as I've just said, third part to ask the support of councillors, both borough and county, to help us in our search for suitable premises. Starting at the very beginning, in 2018, the Joe Cox Commission on Loneliness concluded that, and I have the figures in front of me, that 8 million men feel lonely once a week, 3 million men feel lonely daily, and 2 million men have moderate or severe social isolation. Loneliness, as we probably all know, is a miserable experience. And it also impacts on mental and physical health. Lonely men are twice as likely to have a heart attack as their unlonely counterparts. Their suicide rate and their rate of self-harm also increases, and they are more likely to die if they lose their partner in life. The atmosphere in a men's shed is a very social environment, and that helps to counter these problems. A men's shed is not necessarily a shed per se, but it's a building where men will carry out or can carry out simple activities, making things, mending things, using what you might call DIY skills. What they make and what they mend is entirely up to them. Make furniture, mend bicycles. Oh, Councillor Deach, you might be interested in that. They make aids, simple domestic aids for people who've got mobility problems, decorative features for gardens, whatever they want, they can decide. The concept started in Australia, where there are now over 1,000 sheds, and it's spread to the UK, where we now have 600 plus sheds. So the concept is proven and the benefits are widely accepted. We first proposed creating a shed locally, something like a year ago. We haven't advertised it widely, but in that time, over 50 men have shown an interest in joining us. Actually, I need to correct that because sometimes it's their female partner who has said their men will be interested in joining us, and that's not atypical. So we are quite confident that there is a demand, an adequate demand out there. So we have a proven concept, proven benefits, and a demand. To cover what we have achieved so far locally, we have 8 trustees. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are a registered charity, so we have 8 trustees with the recognised roles of chair, vice chair, treasurer, secretary, and so on. We of course have a bank account. We're registered with HMRC for gift aid. We're a member of the UK Men's Sheds Association. And the good news is that you will soon be able to donate to us every time you buy a qualifying product on Amazon Smile. We can be one of your beneficiaries. Please nominate us. Talking about sheds in abstract is all very well, but I've provided 4 photographs to put a little bit of flesh on the bones, if you could, Councillor Deach.
No problem at all. If you just give me a moment, I will share that with you. Okay, bear with me a second. You should be able to see that now.
I can certainly see it. I'll assume everybody else can. This is the men's shed in Church Crookham / Fleet. That's the exterior. It does look like a shed, but it's a bit more complicated than that, but I can't go into it. We don't have time. The next photo is of the interior of this shed. You see, it's the sort of environment which is expected to appeal to men who have a DIY interest, men who might not necessarily be clubbable in the sort of normal sense of the word. The third photo is the men's shed in Yateley. And inside, the next photo is the inside of the shed. The same sort of thing applies. And interestingly, you may see that industrial waste bin has got Collard on the side of it. The shed has built strong links with Collard, who dispose of all their waste for them, I gather, without charge. We could talk about these for a long time, but I'm sure you won't want me to take up the time. So I'll just bring out one point, which is that these are permanent premises. It's not the sort of activity that you could carry out for a few hours a week in a church hall. You need somewhere definite to put the equipment, leave the equipment, and leave the work that you're handling. Unfortunately, men's sheds don't generate any income or negligible income. They certainly don't have enough money to pay commercial rents, which means that they're dependent on what I've described here, because I've got 1 or 2 notes, and I described it as a sympathetic landlord. And that tends to mean the local authority. So the Church Crookham shed is on allotments owned by the parish council. The Yateley shed is in the grounds of the village hall. The Church Crookham shed pays, I think, about £110 a year for its rent. And my understanding is that Yateley doesn't have to pay anything. And I think that's the sort of model that one has to have in mind. It's a challenge. We've pushed on a lot of doors to try to progress our premises, and I'm going to read the list here. Within the Borough Council, we've approached the Economic Development Manager, the Marketing and Business Manager, the Engagement, Wellbeing and Events Manager, a Principal Planning Officer, and members of the Green Space team. Elsewhere, we've spoken to the Square, Shopping Centre Management, the local Adult Learning Centre, Accent, which is the Housing Association, the Defence Infrastructure Organisation, St Barbara's Church, a care home, the local Horticultural Society, Skanska, who of course are the developers at Deep Cut, parish, county and borough councillors, and the relevant portfolio holder on the Borough Council Executive Committee. We've met with nothing but goodwill. Everybody has been very positive in that regard, but we still haven't been able to locate premises which are available for us immediately. There are long-term prospects, but nothing which we can say, well, we could move into there within the next month or two. How am I doing for time, Councillor Deach?
Well, I think let's have a look. Yeah, I mean, if you want to maybe start wrapping up, and then we'll get to some questions.
I will wrap it up because we have a lot of possibilities to discuss. But the impression that you've probably formed from that list of contacts that I've just read out is that it's been a bit of a scattergun approach. We've had no alternative to that, given our circumstances. It's a very inefficient way of doing things. What we really need is a single point of contact within each of the councils who takes on the challenge of working with us to find and progress premises. So in a nutshell, I guess it's my final sentence or two. What we are asking of our respective councillors is that they identify and establish those single point contacts in the two councils. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Fascinating initiative, and one that I'm pretty sure every single member in this meeting would support. I do happen to know, because interestingly enough, I had a meeting today with the Chief Executive of Surrey Heath Borough Council and another community interest group who are also struggling to find a premises, a location, a permanent home for their activities. They're a very large community group with over 300 members, and yeah, they're really struggling. So, you know, space is a premium, I'm afraid, and that is something that is really the real challenge here. I think that with everybody other councillor here this evening, with their permission, I'd certainly like to facilitate an introduction to you to that single point of contact at Surrey Heath Borough Council and at Surrey County Council. Being a dual-hatted councillor, I have that, I suppose, that scope. And let's see if we can find a way of moving things forward for you. And like you say, who's willing to take on the challenge to see if somewhere can be located for you. But I think that what I'd like to do now, if I may, is allow first of all the councillors in the room, if they have any questions for you, and then open it up to the rest of the floor. So are there any councillors here who would like to ask any questions, or perhaps even in your own wards, if you have any locations ideas that you might have, float them now, please. Trevor Hogg.
Hi, David. Yeah, I've seen several of the men's sheds in operation, so I think it's absolutely brilliant thing to be doing. The question I would make for you is, how many people do you think are likely to queue up as customers to take a place in the men's shed?
Of course, difficult to answer that. Our confidence as much is it's in a proven concept. But as I said, we've had 50 people showing an interest. In fact, I had one approach me only yesterday evening, another contact. We haven't advertised widely. Most men's sheds seem to have of the order of 60 or 70 signed up members, because of course you can only have a dozen or so in the shed at any one time before the waving pieces of wood around gets a bit dangerous. So I would think probably about 60, but until we've advertised definitely, it's a little bit hard to guess.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good number. So do wish you luck on that one, and hopefully some of them will be real craftspeople in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I do know that another initiative locally, the Dementia Cafe and Initiative, they did a cooking thing for gentlemen who had problems because their partners had dementia or whatever. They had a very high take up. So I can't see why this wouldn't have a high take up too. Edward Hawkins.
Paul, you were just talking about the man with the pan.
That was it. That was the one.
I've been supporting for some years. Do you, David, do you want something that is workable now? Unfortunately, I haven't got anything immediately in mind. It's just really underlines what you've been saying, potentially going forward, but nothing immediately now. But what I have got in mind ain't in the best of condition. Is that an issue?
The condition, if it's a challenge, that's positive. That's a plus factor, because it means that not too many other people want those premises, and B, it gives the men in the shed a project to work on from day one. So condition, and we have spoken to people whose premises have been in pretty poor condition, and you can't imagine anybody else occupying them. So that's not a problem.
Yeah. The other point, unfortunately, I came on a bit late, so I may have missed some of this, but must you have parking, or is that something you can live without?
It's an advantage. I discussed this with the shed in Yateley, and they said, well, parking is quite useful because a number of our shed members are such that they need to drive. They can't get here under their own steam. But there's always the opportunity of arranging carpools, car sharing and so forth. So it's not a black and white must have.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that.
Great. And for any members of the public that are in the Zoom meeting this evening, did you have any questions for David? Anybody? No? So I think, go ahead, Tony. If I could ask you to keep it brief, please, sir. And if you could unmute.
David, it's good to hear the work that you're doing. My wife is one of the ones that's been trying to support you to get me more active. So some of the work that we've been doing in other areas is proven very successful. As a result of that, my garage is turned into a satellite. And as much as the picture you showed us, every room in the house has got bits of equipment in preparation for that promise under the grant of having satellite sites and feed it in. So I'd like to talk to you afterwards, because we might have some contact that could be able to help you. And some of them are on this call at this point in time. But without embarrassing them, I thank you for what you've done for my family and my son with the mental health. It's got him into thinking about running his own business. So thank you. And that is a great achievement in the last year. But my wife's concern is that it's a men's shed, not a meat shed. So you'll have some battles online, and you most probably know who that is.
I'm very happy, Chair, if you'll allow me to,
go ahead.
to respond to that. Our constitution and our website makes the point that it's primarily for men, not exclusively for men. It's actually legally perfectly permissible to have a shed purely for men, in the same way that you can have a women's institute. But my personal view, and I'd really rather this recording was switched off at this point, but my personal view is that a few ladies in a men's shed could actually have an improving influence.
Yes, absolutely. Well, look, thank you very much, David, for your presentation. Really appreciate it. Nikki, I'm sure, will chase me up tomorrow to organise those introductions, and let's see if we can move things forward for you.
Right, and I look forward to hearing from Tony or getting in touch with him, if you'll make that happen, Nikki.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, David. Please do stick around. Please do stick around. Absolutely. Now, so now we're going to go into the Q&A element of this Zoom meeting. If you're watching, we've got quite a few people watching the Facebook Live version. If you are one of those people, please, if you've got any questions, put them in the comments there. and we'll get those answered for you. And if you're in the actual Zoom meeting, if you've got a question, please use the raise hand feature, and please only unmute when I invite you to do so. So let's kick things off. Is there anybody here who would like to ask a question on any area relating to the borough or the county council? Whose hand can I see up there? Alistair Pinkerton. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, thank you very much, Paul. Nice to see everybody here. My question is about road safety and the particular questions I have. So there's one very particular question, and that is related to something that this committee has discussed before, and that's the Ravenscote crossing, or the proposed crossing, or the crossing that has been long fought for. And I wondered, I can see Louise here, so forgive me, Louise, if I've stolen your question that you were going to ask, but I just wondered if there was any update on the progress of the work that's been done to survey and consider that site. And then perhaps as a more general question on road safety, because
we've lost Alistair there. We've lost Alistair Pinkerton.
Highway.
We got him back. We lost you for a moment there, Alistair. Go ahead.
Sorry, forgive me. I'm
no,
not
it's all right.
sure where you lost me.
Just go back, I don't know, 30 seconds.
Okay. So I was also just going to ask a slightly more general question about road safety, and I know that you've shown a great interest recently in cycling, and with the highway code recently updated, there's obviously a great deal of interest now on how different road users can use that same real estate in a more safe way. So one of the things that I've been reading a lot about is 20-mile-an-hour zones, and the way that 20 mile an hour, by reducing the speed limit, cyclists and pedestrians and road users can occupy that space far more safely and comfortably, and encourage walking and cycling to school, for example. So there's a particular question there about the Ravenscote crossing, and a more general question about whether people would support the introduction, or at least communities choosing to introduce 20-mile-an-hour zones where it was felt appropriate and helpful to facilitate exactly the kind of active transport that you've shown an interest in. Okay,
understood. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to let Edward Hawkins, as the responsible member, have the first say on this, and then I'll ask Jason to comment as well. So go ahead, Edward.
Good evening, Alistair. Thank you for that. There is a paper coming to the local area committee at the end of this month on Ravenscote. We have made substantive progress, and I believe that we will be able to give some positive news. Discussions are being held with the school on this, as I'm sure you are aware. And incidentally, time has just been changed. On the 7th of March, there is a member seminar on road safety outside schools. But that's just for members, but I'm sure your connections will feed through to you exactly what is said. But the main issue, I do hope, pray, push, and I've been in discussions with Louise on this, that we will have some fairly hard news at the local area committee, and we'll need to get all the committee members on board for them to sign up and progress matters on the Ravenscote crossing as part of the wider issue of safety around our schools. And it is going to be, it's not all be done at one time. Jason will possibly add to that, but yes, there is definite progress, and it will come out at the end of this month.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, on the 20 miles per hour thing, well, I'm going to ask Jason to comment now. Perhaps he could comment on both of those things in terms of Ravenscote crossing and the policy in respect to 20 miles per hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As members of the local committee, you'll be well aware, we have been carrying out a safety assessment in the roads around all of the schools in the area, so not just Ravenscote, but also looking at Tomlinscote and St Augustine's as well. And as part of that process, we've undertaken a series of speed surveys. So we've got some up-to-date information about vehicle speeds, looking at the safety records for the roads. We've also been out with colleagues from the road safety team and Surrey Police and done site observations. So looking at what's happening in Upper Chobham Road, in Old Bisley Road, Chobham Road and Tomlin's Coat Way. So trying to get a sort of wider picture of safety around the schools. And we've recently completed that process. And we've looked at how effective the measures are that have already been introduced, in particular in Upper Chobham Road over a number of years. A series of measures have been introduced to try and help improve safety there. So reduce speed limit, new footways, improved signing. We put in the traffic calming features at the crossing point to try and help slow vehicles at the location where people are crossing. And the work that we've done looking at the speed surveys and what have you suggests that, you know, those measures have been effective. The speeds are much lower in the traffic calm section of the road compared to the part outside of it in Upper Chobham Road. And as you'd expect, particularly at school times when there's a lot of activity, the speeds are actually relatively low because all the parked vehicles, the activities that are going on helps constrain vehicle speeds, and it's much more difficult for people to travel at higher speeds. So that's all good news from that point of view. I mean, sadly, there was an incident last year in Old Bisley Road where a young girl was seriously injured in a collision. But that aside, the road safety in terms of children and pedestrians around the school is relatively good. But that's not to say there isn't more that we can do to try and, you know, make things safer and easier for people to cross the road. And we will be presenting a more detailed summary of the findings of the assessment to the next meeting of the local committee, as was previously mentioned. But coming out of that process, we will be recommending that a proposal to introduce a signal controlled crossing in Upper Chobham Road at the existing crossing point is added to the list of schemes to be considered for inclusion in next year's programme. And there are some other additional measures as well that we're recommending is added to that list of schemes. So looking at improving crossing facilities on the Old Bisley Road. At the moment, large number of children cross on their route to Tomlin's Coat at a small pedestrian island, which really is very small, and you get large groups crossing. So that's another area of concern we identified, and, you know, would like to in the future look at how we can enhance that facility. And also more generally, and tying in with your point about 20s, is the possibility of introducing a 20-mile-an-hour zone around the roads there in the immediate vicinity of the schools. Now, that will take a little bit more work, because it won't just be a case that we can just introduce a 20 and by signage in isolation. We'll also need to look at what supporting measures will be needed to bring the speeds down to an appropriate level for 20. So, you know, that might, for example, mean we need to introduce some additional traffic calming features. So there's a list of different schemes there, but in terms of priorities, the crossing on Upper Chobham Road is obviously something that has been, you know, there's been a lot of concern around safety at that point, and a lot of interest from parents in terms of trying to get something pushed forward at that point, and there's been a lot of member support around that. So that would be, you know, the priority scheme that we're looking at coming out of the recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Now, before I come to Richard Tiru, Councillor Richard Tiru, who has his hand up, I just would like to invite Louise Granger, who is the lead campaigner in respect of the Ravenscote crossing. Perhaps she might want to say a few words. Go ahead, Louise.
Thank you, Paul. I've got quite a lot of noise in the background. Sorry.
That's all right.
Children. Yeah, no, I'm over the moon that we've got this far, and I'm so grateful for Jason to emailing me that lot of detail, which I read about 3 or 4 times to try and absorb it. I'm feeling really, really happy, and just hoping that it all comes to fruition, really. Yeah. there's a massive amount of support for it. I know I'm always here moaning on about it, but it's been needed for so long, as you know.
Well, on behalf of the community, you know, particularly my own, actually, because there's a lot of kids in the area that I represent that go to Ravenscote School and Tomlinscote. My daughter goes to Tomlinscote, actually. Thank you for all the work that you've done and everybody who has supported you. I know it's been a long time coming, and I know that it's been very frustrating, but I think we're getting there now. So, yeah. Fingers crossed. So thanks very much for that, Louise. Really appreciate it. So now that,
Paul.
yeah, thank you. Now, Richard Tier, did you want to say something?
Yeah, in a general sense, it's not just Ravenscote School and Tomlinscote and others. We as a committee should be giving priority to all school crossings. It's a problem across the whole of our part of Surrey and Surrey Heath. And we, as members of this committee, should be pushing school crossings forward right to the forefront of what we're doing and making sure that they are getting the support that they deserve. And there's lots of other schemes, lots of very worthy schemes, but none more worthy, in my view, at this moment in time than school crossings.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Thank you for that. Now, Tony, I know you've got some questions that you've sent me in advance to read out, so I will be coming to those shortly. But I'm going to take a question from the chat. Let me just bring this up from D. Dillon. And the question is, can the council start trimming the tree branches that are obscuring street lights? I regularly run in the mornings and have noticed how dark some of the streets are, despite there being street lights. Surely this is a safety issue for pedestrians. Thank you. Thanks for that, D. Dillon. I'll let Jason comment on that, but before he does, you know, this is something that queries I get from residents all the time, and I have to say that generally, if you report them using the report tool mechanism on the Surrey County Council website, I think you'll find that a lot of those things get dealt with very quickly. And if you can't find how to do that, then email your county councillor, whoever that might be. And they will get that looked at for you. But Jason, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've effectively said what I was going to say. The key thing is to get it reported,
Sure.
so that someone can go and have a look and then determine whether something needs to be done, and then the works can be arranged if it does. So
Okay.
yeah, just repeat the message. Anything like that, you know, jump on the website and get it reported.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that obviously there's so many miles of road network in Surrey that sometimes, with the best will in the world, our officers might not spot everything. So we do we do rely on local residents to give us that intelligence. And like we've said, the easiest way to do that is through the Surrey County Council website. Just look for the tab that says report it, and you'll find your way. So we'll go Graham Alloway.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Just to mention, if you're in a parish area, you might find that some of those trees are on parish land.
Okay.
Certainly in West End, we did a lot of tree light trimming in our jurisdiction area where the trees are. October last year, which definitely improves visibility at night.
Okay, and would you say, Graham, that the best way for residents, if they lived in a parish area, would be to email their parish councillor to get that taken care of?
Yeah, they can certainly check to see if those trees are on parish land, and if they are, they can put the trimming in place. If it's on county or borough land, they'll know where to go to see.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Graham. That was very helpful. Now I'm going to come to Tony Hall now, if I may. Now, Tony, is it the questions you've sent me, or have you got something else to say?
It's congratulations to the work that's been done by Louise and by Richard. But the question that I've got in relation to that is for Jason. There is other crossings that are part of that. So what is the process going forward? And if I give you one that I'm personally involved in, is the Grove on the Portsmouth Road. Now, at the moment, I've been made aware that there's a planning application gone in, and I'm concerned that that the little residents that I know in my particular turning and those that lead up to Finley Park aren't aware of the good work that's been going on. And how do we keep Surrey safe, especially our young children and those most vulnerable in our society? We can take that offline because that leads into a bigger picture that involves a lot of the people that we're already talking to at this point in time. If you've got a quick answer that I can reassure my neighbours that you've got it on the radar and it's not on the back burner, that would be appreciated.
Okay, Tony. There's quite a few things there, but I think really the most important one, I think, for anybody watching this or listening to this is what is the process. So if you think that there's a safety issue that requires some kind of remediation, whether that's traffic calming or a crossing, what is the process? And perhaps Jason, you can answer that, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, it's very much recognised that safety around schools is a key issue, and we do have a dedicated policy specifically around that. So in terms of the process, the key thing again is if you've got a concern, raise it with us. And then we have a road safety outside schools policy. And as part of that, if concern is raised about safety outside a school, in conjunction with our colleagues in the road safety team, we will carry out a road safety assessment. So we'll get speed surveys done. We'll go out as well with colleagues from the police and carry out an on-site inspection. And then the outcome of that is a report which lists the findings, any recommendations. That then goes to the local county councillor in the school. And then depending on what the recommendations are, if there are some measures that suggested it would be helpful to implement, if they're low cost measures like signing improvements, then hopefully we can deliver those quite quickly. But things like we've just been discussing, sort of crossings and the nature which are more expensive, then obviously we get into the realms of needing to sort of identify, funding to be able to take those forward. But the first step is, if you've got concerns, is to report those. We can then check whether a road safety outside schools assessment has been undertaken previously, and if it hasn't, then we can arrange for one to be carried out.
Okay, yeah, I think with some experience of this in my own division, that any money that is spent on these types of things has to be backed up by evidence. Otherwise we'll have crossings on every 100 meters, which is obviously not viable. So just thought I'd make that point. Now, Graham, I noticed you've got your hand up. Did you want to say something? I'll see you there, Joe. I'll come to you in a second. Thank you. Go ahead, Graham.
I would just recommend to the previous speaker also to organise an online petition through the LAC and Surrey County website, so that you can get this officially brought to the LAC for review.
Yeah,
that's definitely worth doing.
Yeah, LAC, for those who might be watching and not knowing what that is, that stands for Local Area Committee, which is what is facilitating this meeting tonight. And the Local Area Committee is made up of borough and county councillors, from Surrey Heath Borough Council and Surrey County Council. So, Joe, go ahead. Did you want to unmute? Hello. There you go.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Deach. Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
I have a quick question, specifically for the highways officer, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
I've had a wonderful note from Mr. Deach saying that he's received a number of inquiries from residents in Mitchett wondering when the double yellow lines will be installed at the locations agreed upon following the parking review. Mm-hmm. And he has been in contact with the lead highways officer on this project and has informed me that the double yellow lines scheduled for this month, i.e. January, will be done imminently. Well, they were originally scheduled for autumn of last year, and that didn't happen, I'm guessing possibly due to COVID stuff. But then it was scheduled again imminently for January. Well, we're in February now, and we're just wondering
where it is. Yeah.
So the double yellow lines off Mitchett Heath,
Yes.
Mitchett Road,
Yeah.
and Beaufort Bridge Road, and so that was the first question.
Can I answer that first, and then we'll come to your next one, Joe, if that's all right?
Yes.
So, yeah. So you've got something slightly wrong there. What was delayed was not the actual installation of the double yellow lines back last year. It was the actual review that was undertaken to see if double yellow lines was necessary, and that was, you're quite right, because of COVID and so on. So they have been scheduled, they've been signed off. We were actually hoping that they would be done last week, but it is all dependent on weather conditions, and it has to be a certain temperature and so on before they can install them. Can't be any rain or anything like that. It is still imminent. It will happen, I would imagine, any day now, weather permitting.
Yeah, because I mean, we have had a couple of weeks of really quite good weather.
Yeah, the only problem is, Joe, is that that area is not the only area that the team installs these things has to do. So it has to fit into the schedule. And of course, when there's even one day of bad weather, there's a knock-on effect and so on. But it's going to happen, and it's going to happen any time now, I promise you. All right.
And the follow-up question for that,
is,
as you are aware, Mr. Deitch, I'm speaking on behalf
of
the chairman of the Mitchett Heath
residents. Yeah.
So it's not me.
Okay.
Also, how will it be policed? For example, cars are parked there daily at 7 a.m. in the morning, and I assume parking officers are not wandering around at 7 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
So how will these people be deterred from still parking on double yellow lines, which we've all seen people sadly do continue to park on double yellows?
Okay, so as is always the case with these things, they're only as good as the enforcement. So you can have yellow lines there, but if no one's actually enforcing them, then their behaviour is going to continue. Just so happens that we have the chairman of the Parking Services Task Group on the call this evening, Graham Alloway. And I'm sure he's listening to this loud and clear. So whenever the next meeting is of the Parking Services Task Group, he will make sure that that is firmly on the agenda. Is that right, Graham?
Indeed. Enforcement is a bit of an issue, and the amount of officers to go around and check all these places outside of Cambly town centre, really. Now, I was keen to see if the parking officers would accept some photographic evidence from councillors as a reasonably, hopefully, trusted source of evidence. Not that they'll probably issue tickets based on that, but they'll have some info to say, yeah, those cars are always getting parked there. There's time stamped on the photos, and they can focus in at perhaps a time and observe certain vehicles who are repeat offenders. Yeah. And I really hope that'll extend to continual blocking of footpaths, especially around schools as well.
Yeah,
so, it's definitely on the parking group agenda. I absolutely guarantee that.
Could I ask Nikki to make a note of that, please, to make sure that that is put on the agenda for the next Parking Services Task Group, please? Thank you. But you are right, Graham. Antisocial parking is a big issue. It's something that fair to say, probably get more communication about that than anything else. Certainly in Mitchett, which is the reason that led to that parking review, Joe. But there is a fine balance between being heavy-handed and treating residents as cash cows, and genuine community safety and so on. So, and that's always a difficult balance to strike. We actually only have, correct me if I'm wrong, Graham, I never attended the last meeting of your working group, but correct me if I'm wrong if this has changed. But my understanding is there's only 6 enforcement officers right across Surrey Heath, with only 4 on duty at any one time. And they have a wide area to cover outside schools, the town centre, the village economies and so on. So, it is a very wide net they have to cast. Have I got that right, Graham?
That's correct. There is 6. There's one on reduced availability at the moment, but 6 is the number. And yeah, they've got a wide area to cover. So any help they can get on targeted intel is useful to them. Same as the police as well, actually, because some of these issues are within the remit of the police to enforce on parking.
Sure.
Because especially if it's an unregulated road with no yellow lines in or anything like that.
Yeah.
So inconsiderate parking on bends, totally blocking the footpath, that all falls within the police remit.
Yeah. Absolutely. Parking on pavements is another big one. And unfortunately, unless, as Graham has said, unless there are parking restrictions in place, there's nothing the council enforcement officers can do about that. However, the government did a consultation a year or so ago, and I think there's going to be some news on parking on pavements pretty soon. My hope is that the government are going to give local authorities the powers they need to enforce that, because it's not right, is it, that people in wheelchairs, mobility scooters, parents with prams are forced into busy roads because somebody can't be bothered to park properly. So I think that definitely is something that needs looking at. Now I'm going to go to a question that we've had on Facebook, Nikki, if that's all right. Yeah. So the question is from Stuart, and he would like to know. I would like to know when the new cycle lanes from Cambly to Finley will be constructed. Actually, I'd like to know that too. And perhaps Jason can talk us through what the process is there, because I'm not actually sure. I think they're still in the design phase, if I remember right. Go ahead.
I must admit, this is not a scheme that I'm working directly on, so my knowledge is a little bit limited. We've got a separate project team who are dealing with this. And I know it was out to consultation a little while ago, and there was information on our website, and I think the consultation is now closed, but I'm not entirely sure at what point we are in the process now. If I'm able to feed that back to be shared back to interested parties afterwards,
Yes,
I'll be very happy to do that, get the information and feed it back to you.
Yes, please. And Stuart, if you're still watching this live, perhaps if you could send a direct message to the Surrey Heath Local Committee Facebook page, just so that they can capture your email address, and we will get you a full answer to that question. It's actually something I want to know myself, as it happens, as a new cyclist. So thank you very much for that question. Really appreciate it. I'm going to go to the comments inside the Zoom meeting now, just to see if there are any other questions there. So there's one here from Michael. Okay, vehicles from Bagshot on the dual carriageway approaching the M3 junction at Lightwater often find themselves in the wrong lane for going south. They are in the London lane going left and have to cut across other lanes to turn right instead. The signing is inadequate on the dual carriageway, and the solid white line at the top of the M3 London bound slip road ramp is regularly worn away, causing vehicles to stop instead of filtering in. Could a more solid form of white line be installed there, and better signs be installed, and improved road markings painted explaining which lane to be in for each M3 direction? Let's go with Jason to answer that, please.
Yeah, I mean, we are aware there's an issue there with the condition of the existing lining. It's been with our maintenance team for some time, trying to arrange for those works to be completed. It's out with the contractor. I think some of the problems relate to the nature of the area. It's not an easy location to work because of the requirement for agreement from national highways because of proximity to their network, and also the traffic management that's required in order to carry out those works safely at what is a very busy junction. But yeah, I've seen it myself. The situation at the moment with the line so badly worn, it is confusing for drivers that they're not appreciating, or some aren't appreciating who aren't familiar with the location, that the near side lane is effectively a jet lane straight onto the motorway slip road, and you can see occasionally people are slowing down. They're unclear whether they need to stop or not. So we are aware, and we are pushing for that to be for the lines to be repainted as soon as possible. And if you look back on historic images which are available on Google Street View, for example, you can see that when the markings are in good condition, the layout of the road and the situation is very much clearer. The problems are being caused because the existing line is in such poor condition.
Okay, thank you very much. I see Councillor Hogg has got his hand up. Did you want to say something, Trevor?
Yeah, just to say that I agree. The markings are awful there. Last weekend, somebody in a van nearly took me out when I was moving to the right-hand lane, because he decided that it needed to get to the right-hand lane too, and then realised that actually needed to be in the far left lane to go to the motorway. So it was interesting driving, shall we say the least. But I think it all just goes to show there is at the moment insufficient guidance to motorists.
Okay, thank you. Now, I've got a question in the comments that I'm going to go to here from Paul. We have been told about the introduction of parking charges in some of the established car parks. Surely this will make them even worse in the roads where there is a problem. So just to give some context to that for anybody watching, Surrey Heath Borough Council have recently increased parking charges in some of the borough's car parks across the borough. They've also, where there was free parking, where free parking existed, they've either they've introduced a 1 hour free period instead of it being free for 2 hours or completely free. I think that's with the exception of a deep cut car park. Atia in the comments has also, to add to that, has said, I wish we were keeping free car parks in Finley Green. Now, the problem we've got this evening is that the introduction of parking charges is not a local area committee decision. It was made by the executive of Surrey Heath Borough Council, and I don't believe we've got any executive members on the call this evening. So it's going to be difficult to answer that. I will say though, as the county councillor for Finley Green, with the Finley Green car park, that it's frustrating that those measures have been introduced, because we know that in places like Beach Road and some of the surrounding roads, Buckhurst and so on, where there are parking problems already. As I said earlier, I get a lot of communication about parking problems. The worry is that it may push the problem somewhere else. That's obviously something that we're going to have to monitor very closely. From the local area committee perspective, the only thing we can do is to call for parking reviews once a problem starts to present itself. So that is something, certainly in Finley Green, that I will be watching very closely. I don't know if any other councillors on the call that have car parks in their area wanted to comment on that. Anyone? No? Okay, thank you. So thanks for your question. Just looking at this comment from Alistair on parking on pavements. Parking on pavements was banned outright. Certainly it was in London. Very watchful implement. Yeah, we ought to be careful about implementing blanket, I think is the comment you've made, Alistair. Be very careful about implementing an outright ban on parking on pavements. I completely agree, actually. That's not what I would certainly support. My support was option B in the government consultation, which was to give local authorities the powers they need to enforce where it's necessary. So where a parking attendant, civil enforcement officer would look at a case and use judgment to whether that's causing an obstruction or not, certainly, or a danger to pedestrians. That would be my preference, not an outright ban, because I think that sometimes you've got to be careful what you wish for. You actually end up creating more problems with the one that you've solved. So yeah, thanks for that comment. Have we got any questions on Facebook, Nikki? If you could look at that, and I'll work through some of the ones in here. So Attia has 2 questions. Can we have an update on having exercise equipment in Finley Lodge Park? I can't give you an update on that at the moment, Attia. I know that they have been doing work in Finley Lodge Park on the trim trail. But as far as exercise equipment is concerned, that's something, if you want to email me as the ward member, let's say, for that area, that's something I can chase up with the leisure services team at Surrey Heath Borough Council. And the other question from Attia is, you've not seen the toilet facilities in Mitchett Road recreation ground being used. You're not sure if they're safe. Apparently they were closed down because they had drainage issues there. And they've never been fixed. But again, that's something I can get looked into if you, as the ward member for Mitchett. Okay, so thank you for that. Any other questions there in Facebook, Nikki? And if anybody has a question in the meeting, please use your raise hand feature, and I will come to you. Graham, you go ahead, sir.
It's just to follow up something that Alistair raised there, and yeah, for blocked pavements and strategic routes to community facilities is what we're sort of trying to focus on. In fact, every borough ward councillor has got a facility for identifying key routes for old people or young people going to school, so routes to schools, routes to doctor's surgery, chemists, local shops. Those key strategic paths are the ones we'd like to sort of focus on to see what can be done for making sure those paths are clear. If you want people to walk, you've got to make it comfortable and accessible for them. Even trying to get them to go to bus stops and use buses. Well, if you're walking along there with a shopping bag trolley or a buggy pushchair and you've got to start negotiating blocked paths, it just puts you off.
Okay, thank you for that. Stuart Stacey, you've got a question, and then when we've answered that, I'm going to go to Tony's pre questions that he sent in. So go ahead, Stuart.
I'm sorry, my video isn't working.
No problem at all, sir.
I just want to know who to write to, because street signs are put up when they're planning roadworks, and they are left up for a long period, long after they've been taken down. I mean, on Old Bisley Road here, we've had a sign put up saying the road will be closed for 8 hours or whatever it was on the 21st of January. The work was never done. The sign is still there today, still flaunting itself, and it's a sign both ways. So who do I write to say, come on, clear the pace up and make it look tidy?
Jason Gosden.
Mr. Chairman, it's just a case of reporting it to the county council. You do it through our website. At one point, we did have a dedicated report it facility specifically for this type of issue, where redundant signs are being left behind. But I think it's probably, I'm not sure whether that still exists. It's easiest just to go through the main website and just use the report it function.
So that's for Surrey Heath, is it?
No, Surrey County Council.
Surrey County Council, right. That's all I want to know who to write to, because they clutter up the place and they leave them there for ages.
Stuart, whereabouts are you in the borough?
Old Bisley Road, near Ravenscote School.
Okay, because you can always email Edward Hawkins as well if you struggle to report it. I'm sure he will get that looked at for you too.
Okay, thank you very much.
Edward is your county councillor.
Sorry, Paul, can I come in? Stuart, you'll find my email address on the website. I too wondered about that one up at the top of Old Bisley Road, and I went up up that way, and I thought, what the heck's happening, and didn't see anything. But if you send me, I'll chase one up for you.
Yeah, right. Well, nothing's happened in a fortnight. So.
Okay.
Which website were you talking about, by the way? Looking for your email address?
Well, it's edward.hawkins@surreycc.gov.uk. It's on the Surrey County Council.
Surrey County Council. Right, you are. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks for your question. Now, I'm going to go to, because we're running out of time now, so I'm going to go to some of the questions that I was sent in advance by Tony Hall. So bear with me while I read some of these out. How do you propose to ensure that lessons learned from the last 3 years are adopted, highlighted through the pandemic, to meet the individual needs of people going forward using partnership and client relationship methodologies? 2, as part of the current transition joining services, there should be more transparency, not just lip service. Investigate concerns raised by individuals in a timely manner through the local and county council select committees and CCGs, giving full feedback on any outcomes. Can you explain how and what the CCG, so that's the clinical commissioning group, role and contribution to this will be? How will integration will develop over the next year? So what are you all working in partnership? Explain how you propose to measure operational acceptance for health and well-being of all our citizens to understand concerns raised on their behalf, regardless of age and individual ability. And finally, can you explain how the bottom-up approach has been promoted since 2017 will underpin your work to address some of the challenges coming out of lockdown, if this is not already covered in your revised plan and timescales? So there's a lot there, Tony, hell of a lot there. I think that what I would actually like to do to make sure that you get a full response to all those questions, which are very good questions. I'm going to ask the relevant cabinet member or members. I'm going to send this on to them and ask them to respond. I think my only comment, though, would be that I think it would be silly of us. I think it would be negligent of us, actually, to not learn any lessons over the last couple of years from the pandemic. There's been a hell of a lot of those. I think that the NHS, the CCG and all partner agencies, and I know how hot you are on partnership working, Tony, I think they've probably learnt more in the last 2 years than they have probably in the last 10 about the way that they work and efficiency, because they've been forced into that. What I do know is that the leader of the council, in his recent speech to a full meeting of the council, was very keen to use his words that no one gets left behind. That's easier said than done, I have to say. There's a lot of people in our communities that need a lot of help, and of course that help costs money. But there are ways to with linking into voluntary organisation and the faith sector and so on. But also trying to build up some resilience in the community that a lot of these things can be addressed. So I'm gonna, like I say, ask the relevant cabinet member or members to give you a full response to your questions there. I'm also going to send it on to the leader of the council, because I know that he has a special interest in some of the areas that you've highlighted in your questions, and I hope that is good enough for you, Tony. Did you want to quickly come back with something on that?
Thank you, Paul. I am very conscious of all the good work that's gone on through Surrey Heath Prepared and the networking that has kept us sane. But what I am concerned going forward is that we've still got communication difficulties and inter-department working. And that is one of the things that I will be focused on going forward, because it impacts on everybody and the promises for 2030. So this is getting our act together and step by step, But if we slip or make mistakes, be open and honest, tell us so we can work as a team, not
Understood.
a cross team. So thanks to everybody that knows me on the school.
Thank you, Tony.
For those that don't know me, I'll be back.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much, and really appreciate your contribution there. Now, I think that we are done. Unless anybody's got a quick question they want to fire at us, I think we're done. It's been a really useful session. We intend to do these on a more regular basis. I hope that everybody who was here this evening found it equally useful. And we will, if you keep an eye on the Surrey Heath Local Committee Facebook page, we will advertise the next one very soon. We'll set a date for that. But thank you very much for joining. Really do appreciate it. If I could ask Nikki to end the live stream and the recording,